I know, we've already gone a pretty long tangent about us.
Him in the boat. Those photos live in my head rent-free, for sure.
Was it like an inflatable pool is the other one?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Grid Gals. This is episode 10, and we were originally going to talk about our drive for Mary's birthday, but unfortunately it got rained out, which we were not expecting. So today I think we're going to be talking sprint races, since we had a couple questions this past race weekend. So I think we did a little research, got some drivers' opinions, and we'll come with some new information today.
Yeah, I was definitely bummed the drive got rained out, but considering we're not professional drivers, definitely glad that we're waiting to have a dry track and a safe, fun experience.
Yeah, I think even if the track was just the tiniest bit wet, I would be really nervous.
Oh my god, yeah.
Because it's not like I'm driving a Prius or like something with like four-wheel drive. I'd be nervous.
No, and like we actually rented a car yesterday because we were planning on driving out to the suburbs and ended up just driving around the city. And, you know, it was actually this tiny little Mitsubishi that was working so hard. The engine was straining, especially after a Costco trip. But driving that in the rain, fine.
Oh yeah, totally safe.
Like I don't have issues driving in the rain.
No.
But fast laps in a supercar in the rain, no thanks.
I was a little shocked that they called it so early in the day, because I think our drives were at like 3:30, and we got a notification
like 10 or 11.
10 or 11, but thinking it through, from a liability perspective, if I were at the track, I would have definitely just been like, yeah, a little bit of water, we're just rescheduling all of you.
Oh yeah.
And I'm glad they called it when they did, because I don't really want to drive an hour out to Joliet for nothing.
And I think it would just be sad to like see the cars, like be right there, and then just not be able to do it. Just within grasp.
So much love to all of our fans in Joliet, but we'll catch you in July. Yeah, so Imola, the first of 3 sprint races for the year. They introduced the sprint race last year, and originally I heard that the bosses of F1 wanted to do 6 this year, but after some feedback from the teams, I think especially with the cost caps, some of the really high-performing teams, you know, there's risk involved with a sprint race, and so they settled on 3 again. Which, I mean, out of 23 races,
yeah,
I think that's a good number.
Yeah. First one was Imola, and then we'll have one for Silverstone, and then one for Monza, which those are pretty iconic races in themselves, so having a sprint will be extra fun, I feel like. I think it's actually good to probably explain what a normal race weekend looks like versus a sprint weekend, because when I'm telling people about a normal race weekend, it's a lot. So you have like practice on Friday, and then you have qualifying and practice on Saturday, and then you have the race on Sunday. But then once you move to a sprint format, you have qualifying and a practice on Friday, which qualifying determines the grid for the sprint, and then the sprint and a practice on Saturday, which determines the starting grid for the race, which is just like an extra step that I feel like if you're not really following Formula One is like kind of confusing, because it's almost like 2 qualifyings.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I think the fact that this quali sets the grid for the sprint race and then the sprint race sets the grid for the race is where most drivers had opinions about it. I think there were a lot of drivers who were saying they were supportive of the sprint race overall. You know, they like racing. I think Vettel was one who said, you know, we're race car drivers, we like to race, and so it's taking away some of the practices and just adding another race. Really supportive of, because I think it is kind of fun for them. But they were still saying that they'd almost prefer the sprint be a standalone event and have quali set the grid for the sprint race and for Sunday, and have the sprint just be its own standalone thing. And there were a couple of different ideas.
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah, on ways to mix it up, and one of the things that they proposed, just to like, especially knowing that the sprints are pretty much for the fans, to give fans more racing, to keep the weekend more interesting. I don't remember who proposed this, but I saw a proposal saying that quali on Friday would set the grid for Sunday, and the sprint race, someone proposed having it as a reverse grid. So in order of the championship, whoever's first in the championship starts last, whoever's last in the championship starts first, and so then you still have points awarded in the sprint race, but you have your top championship contenders at the back fighting their way up the grid. Because they were like, this is for the fans anyway.
Yeah.
Let's keep it interesting. And, you know, in that case, they were like, let's just do top 10, for example. Keep it simple. 10 points for first, 1 point for 10th, all the way down. If you're somebody who struggled through the championship, you still have a chance to score points. Some points. Where, you know, the format it is right now, those teams, it's so much harder. And, like, we have seen teams go an entire season without scoring any points.
Which is interesting that you read that, though, because that's actually how Formula 2 works. So Formula 2, their qualifying starts the reverse grid for the sprint race. So they actually do the reverse grid for the top 10 places.
Formula 2 does a reverse
They
grid.
do a reverse grid.
For
I'd never
all
heard
20
that.
places or just top 10?
I think just the top 10. So that's originally what they're considering for Formula 1, but I think drivers obviously had a huge issue with that, especially like your top drivers aren't going to want to do a reverse grid.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback I got or read about drivers were, a lot of them weren't major fans, at least the ones that I read from. George Russell made a really interesting comment about why he didn't really prefer the sprint race aspect. And I think we saw this in Imola with how the race played out. Your tire pick is so important, and because it's so short, you don't have a lot of tire degradation. Mm-hmm. So he was advocating for the sprint races to be 50% longer than they are today to allow that to come into play, which I thought was a little bit interesting because I think it takes away from the fact of the sprint is that you're just focused on the racing. But I get the aspect of there's not a lot of time, so tire and strategy doesn't come into play. And there's not a lot of time to make moves. So really like how you qualify in the sprint race, unless you have a big mess up, is probably where you're going to end up finishing a lot of the time. So
I think it's interesting that he said that this year versus last year, because
you have to take it with a grain of salt too, and like who's saying it. But I still thought that comment was it makes sense coming from him, knowing everything it's happened so far this season. But it's still something interesting to think about as like they're trying to figure out like what they think is fair and what you could do to potentially make it more competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of like that though, because I feel like if you made it 50% longer, well then it's not really a sprint. You know, I think one of the cool things about a sprint is it's a totally different dynamic than a Grand Prix. You know, where...
Exactly.
Yeah, if you extend it to the point where you're doing pit stops, you have a full tire strategy, well, then just do the Grand Prix.
Right.
You know, so I kind of like having the sprint be... I do think it would be fun if they did something with, like, a reverse... Like, I think that'd be super fun.
I think it'd be fun.
That'd be so cool.
Yeah, you know, you got the Williams, like, locking out the front row. You have Ferrari in the
Latifi
back.
on the front row.
And
Let's
it gives
go.
them a chance to, like, score some, like, pretty significant points, more than probably some teams would even score in a normal race.
Well, and especially depending on the track, like, if it's a track where overtaking is more challenging or less challenging, I think they pick tracks where you can definitely overtake versus, like, you're not going to see a sprint in Monaco.
No.
And it wouldn't be fun. It would be the same thing again.
Right.
But I like the sprints. As a spectator, I think they're fun to watch.
Yeah, I love the sprints. I also love quali, and I think people forget about quali. Like, anytime I explain F1, they're always like, oh, do you watch everything? And I'm like, yeah, like, sometimes my favorite thing of an entire race weekend, like, I'll sometimes even watch practice. Like,
I was going to say, I'm not going to lie, I will usually skip practice.
I watch the practice highlights sometimes if I know something good happened. But I agree, qualifying is a really interesting event to watch. And it gives you some little bit of an indication of how you feel the race is going to shake out.
exactly.
Especially since there's all those other factors that really go into how a car performs, weather, the climate that they're in. Have the engineers spent enough time tweaking things? Did they crash in practice and have to fix something? So qualifying is really your first look at how you think the grids or how you think the Grand Prix is going to end up shaking out. So it's fun to watch it.
I think one of the other interesting things that came up in Imola too, knowing they had one practice session and then quali because of the sprint, was when you can and can't make changes. But they were saying that because you can't make major changes after qualifying, a lot of times they'll use the front wing as a tool to kind of compensate for other changes that they would have made. Like, let's say you have some other problem, you give yourself like more downforce or less. You can adjust the wing after qualifying, which can help you balance out other issues with the car, not as a true fix, but just to get you through the weekend. And so with a sprint race, backing up qualifying, I wonder what it's like for the engineers to know that A, you have less time to get data because fewer practices, but B, you stop being able to make changes to the car earlier in the weekend.
Yeah, I think that aligns with why a lot of the drivers are a little bit more hesitant to it, because they know how important like some of that time is, and the engineers having the time with the car. So
if you're an F1 engineer and you have grievances to air about sprint races,
I'd love to hear them.
call up the Grid Gals.
we'll have you on the pod. We can do a debrief on how you adjust your process for the sprint races versus the regular. How consulting did I just sound? Very consulting.
Very consulting. But I feel like we are kind of like itching to get our hands on some data. Actually see how this plays out.
I want it.
How many plugs can we make for getting F1's data?
I swear to God, I'll sign whatever NDA you put in front of me.
Yeah.
Have fun! Like, and not to sound like the world's biggest nerd, because I don't just live and die for data analysis, but if you have a really good data set, it's fun to play with. And imagine getting to play with F1 data.
I hope it has graphics where you can see like the little car go around. Oh, that would be fun.
So cute.
I love when they zoom in on the screens and stuff during the weekend and you see all these lines and I'm like, zoom in closer. Pause. Like, what's on your axis? What's the X? What's the Y? I need to know. I don't even have that good of vision. Even if they did, I need to put my glasses on.
Probably.
So one driver that was all in for the sprint races, our very own and the least favorite driver,
Lance Stroll.
Lance Stroll.
Oh, as soon as you said that,
direct quote. I like the way it is. I mean, he was like, I like the way, Lance, please describe what your opinion about the every other F1 driver's going, like I like it because of this, I don't like it because of this, and he's like, I like it the way it is.
So Jack, question, does the fact that Lance Stroll is a huge proponent of the sprint races make you dislike the sprint races? How far does your hatred of Lance Stroll go?
No, I think I could be objective. I still support the sprint races overall. Like we said, I think it is really interesting for us fans. I think I do like some of the suggestions that we've made so far. I would love to see even more changes to it.
Yeah, hey, Ross Braun, listen to Grid Gals.
That reverse grid.
That reverse grid, love that. He just seemed to really like the risk and reward aspect of it. I just really don't know if there's a lot going up in his head sometimes when he's like having some of these interviews. But
the risk and reward?
Yep, the risk and reward makes it interesting.
You know that for the Vegas Grand Prix, Lance is going to be tearing up the tables, throwing it all on black.
Oh, he's going to take a full week off after, and he's never going to leave a casino. He's just going to be at a table for the entire week.
That just sounds like a gambler mindset.
Yeah.
Oh, so actually, you know what? That sounds like somebody who knows that they don't really have a good shot this season. And they're like, the only way Aston Martin is scoring points. And this is coming from the person who, my dumb ass, thought that Aston Martin was going to be the third place team this season. So, yeah.
I'm really excited to revisit
over here.
Sometimes I think about the things that I predicted for this season, and some very spot on, and I wish I would have put Bottas higher. Yeah. That's my biggest regret of my grid, and everyone would have laughed at me, but it's only crazy until it's true.
I put Bottas really high.
You did.
It's only but, I mean, I think all of us were still because last season was the only season we had watched pretty much all the way through. We were very skewed towards last season, and I don't think any of us imagined that Lewis would start off the season like he has. I think we were expecting a little bit more results, although we were hesitant. We did mention that how the cars turn out is really going to have an effect on our grids, but yeah, I'm hating myself right now. I should have definitely done it.
all the changes, I mean, I think we kept talking about, there's so many. It's kind of wild to see them all play out.
It is.
Yeah, we'll have to do a full debrief on that, but anyway, I think that's why Lance Stroll is very pro sprint race. I think because he knows that it's just one of the few opportunities. Because Seb in Imola, Vettel had a great weekend, considering he's in an Aston Martin and how well the Aston Martins are doing. Yeah. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't they dead last in the constructors right now?
Oh, I don't look that low, but
okay. Okay. Cool.
For all our people or for the people who can't see, I just rolled my eyes. Big eye roll.
Big eye roll.
Maybe they
were, I think, going into Imola. I think
they might have just scored their first set of points.
Yeah, because even Williams had points.
Yeah.
Well, Williams only has 1 point, so they're dead last. Aston Martin now has 5.
Okay.
But they got those, I think, just this past weekend.
Well, speaking of Seb, actually, I think when the sprint races first came out, he was upset with the title of pole for the sprint races, which they've actually reverted back. So now only in qualifying you get pole, which I think is when you get those like tiny tires.
Yeah. And I do think that's a kind of a fair judgment to make, especially because, I mean, he's been in the sport for so long. He's a 4-time world champion.
Right.
His point was, you can't take the result of a sprint race and compare it to the result of a quali on equal footing.
Yeah.
In terms of actually putting together stats. Because, like some of the greats of the past, like Michael Schumacher, Senna, all those people, they didn't have a chance to do a sprint race. So when you're looking at statistics and comparing people across generations of racing, it does skew it.
It does skew it, yeah. That's for sure.
And I think it's fair to have differentiation. It keeps the comparisons apples to apples.
And, I mean, qualifying's so different than a sprint race.
Yeah.
Because I feel like qualifying is, like, the purest form of the car and the driver and seeing their skill.
You're pushing to the limit.
Yeah.
It is, I think that's why qualifying is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because, yes, like, you still have people on the track, and sometimes that matters.
Yeah.
Especially if people, like, crash, you get safety cars, you get red flags, whatever, but you do get to kind of see uninterrupted, pure shots for each team, each driver, in the best of conditions. And see what you can do with the machine you've been given.
Right.
Which is why it's also really fun when people qualify very differently with the same car on the same team.
Yeah.
I think you could definitely see the driver differentiation come out in quali.
I feel like we really saw that, and I think you mentioned it last time we recorded, but with Schumacher and with Magnussen.
And Magnussen, you're really starting to see... It's funny, listening back to last week's recording, we didn't necessarily debrief on Schumacher's performance in the race itself, but you could really see in the disparity in how they've been qualifying and even how they've been performing in the actual race themselves. It comes into question a little bit more about mixed skill. And you can really, like, for Magnussen to be doing that much better and Mick not even getting close to his performance. Sometimes you see drivers a couple places apart. There's other factors that go into it. Obviously, it's not perfect, like only driver car on the track, and sometimes there is small differences. But at the end of the day, it's pretty darn close. So I'm interested to see, as the season goes on, if he gets a little bit better, gets a little bit more comfortable, or if we still see this gap, what Haas is going to do. I don't know when his contract's up, but if they're going to... think about replacing him.
I've heard some rumors. So that's why I'm excited. I know we talked about it also last podcast, but I'm excited to talk about potential driver changes for the next couple of years.
I think the thing that's interesting about Haas, too, and Schumacher is, okay, so it's his second year in F1. Well, last year, I think traditionally, you see a lot of pairings where you have an experienced driver and a rookie driver. And last year, for his rookie year, he was partnered with another rookie. And he was partnered with a rookie who was not performing very well. And I think it made him look a lot better, absolutely. You compare Schumacher to Mazepin.
Right.
Yeah. But he didn't have the benefit of, like, having a mentor as a teammate. And so I wonder how him and Magnussen's relationship is, and if having Magnussen as a mentor, like, because you can learn from him. You're in equal machinery. And granted, I have no idea what that relationship is like, and sometimes it can be contentious between teammates. Well, and, like, there's such an age difference, and there's such a clear, like, they're at different points in their careers.
Yeah.
Where I think it's different, for example, if you look at, like, Ferrari, and you have two drivers who are approaching the peak of their career. They're relatively the same age. Both, now that Carlos Sainz has signed another 2 years with Ferrari, their contracts are up at the same time. That's a very different teammate relationship than Magnussen and Schumacher. You know? So I wonder, because, like, not to just shit on Mazepin more, but, like, what could Schumacher learn from him?
And I don't think they had a super great open relationship where they were, like, sharing information and helping each other out. I don't think it was like that.
Well, and two rookies in general, like, that's a tough team dynamic. You don't have anyone, like, leading.
Right.
So I hope over the course of the season, because it's only Imola was the fourth race.
There's plenty of time, and I'm not saying by any means that they should call it right now, but I think if we have this conversation again in a couple of months where continues to be such a gap, I think they're going to really think long and hard about potentially replacing him.
Or is Magnussen just, like, that great? Like, I'm a big Magnussen fan.
I kind of am too. Since he wasn't a driver last season, I kind of forgot about him.
Yeah.
You know, out of sight, out of mind type
He's
deal.
my brother's favorite driver, which I think is funny.
That is kind of funny.
Oh, that's cute. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, and we got into this sport totally, transparent here because we started watching Drive to Survive. And at the beginning of Drive to Survive, Haas is very prominently featured because, again, some of the biggest teams, like, didn't take part in the first season. And it's kind of funny to go back and rewatch the old episodes and see Magnussen and Grosjean. And even then, Grosjean, very different than Schumacher, but Magnussen was always the consistent one. He was the one
Very
who was,
consistent.
like, scoring points for the team. But they do say in there, they're like, he's kind of like the bad boy of Formula One.
Oh,
Magnussen?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He had some, like, pretty famous quotes.
He's like,
I don't know
love
that we can
that.
repeat them.
no, maybe not. Well, I mean, we do flag these episodes for explicit content.
True.
Because we do swear sometimes, so we're not talking about anything bad, by the way. We just every now and then say fuck, but... But there was the famous thing where he, like, slammed Gunther Steiner's door. Like, I don't know if he broke it, but... Gunther was like, how dare you disrespect me, like, I will fucking cut you from this season. I don't need either of you guys. And then basically he did. He cut Grosjean and Magnussen loose.
That's funny to see, like, especially, like...
I love Gunther. He is
So funny.
by far my favorite. He's just such a character. I love it.
The picture of him with the boat. Okay, the Haas photo shoot. We need to talk about it. We're already talking about Haas.
I know, we've already gone a pretty long tangent about us.
Him in the boat. Those photos live in my head rent free for sure.
Was it like an inflatable pool? Is the other one?
I'm sorry. Who planned this photo shoot? I'm so curious. Like, what was the point of it?
I think it was, like, promotional. Like, those were their sponsors. They have to, like, go do this photo shoot with, like...
They're like raising money. I think it's like a playground equipment company.
I'm just imagining, like, if my team had to do one of my clients is a playground equipment company, and if we had to do a team photo shoot on a playground equipment.
Like, someone swinging on the swing. Those would have been great photos for us.
Popping out of the slide. Oh my god.
So many missed photo opportunities here.
Honestly, yeah, they could have done more. I wish more teams had to do awkward photo shoots like that.
Yeah, like, stop being so glamorous. Stop being in, like Armani ads.
Yeah, like, AlphaTauri gets to do great photo shoots because they have that whole clothing line. So, like, everything they do looks cool.
Can you imagine Lewis being asked to pose beside that boat?
I would love that.
I got some pretty cringy, like, old school Hamilton photos I'm gonna have to send you guys. Like, back when he was, like, first getting into F1, where you do have to do, like, that.
You know what?
That stuff.
Everyone should have to go through it.
I think everyone should.
It's kind of like hazing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Where it's like, everyone should have an awkward phase. It's unfair if you don't get one.
Yeah.
Like, there was always that one girl in middle school who never went through the awkward phase. You're like, why?
Honestly, I think if you're pretty in middle school, you deserve to have braces in college.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's a
Tell
hot
me
take.
I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
That is a hot take if I've ever heard one.
It's pretty vengeful.
Should we bring up some photos from middle school?
Oh my god, yeah, no.
No, absolutely not.
The best part was, like, to be fair, my makeup, like, techniques have not really evolved that much. I still wear glitter eyeshadow.
Tasteful glitter, though.
I don't do, like, the raccoon waterline eyeliner anymore.
Yeah.
That
Although
was-
I'm sure it's going to come back in anytime now.
Oh, I did that for a long time. I did the bottom eyeliner for
There's a way that it can be
more
done
than
well.
I like to admit.
Yeah, you can do well.
But
Catherine's trying so hard to do a little white lie here. You didn't look terrible for the past 8 years.
Like, I haven't known you that long.
we've only been friends for 5.
Just feels like so long. I can't imagine my life without you now.
Where did we even leave off of the sprint race?
Oh,
wait, Jackie, I have a good fact for you
Oh.
on
Hit me
sprint
with it.
races.
Loving. Give me all the sprint race info.
And I'm giving this to Jackie, and you'll hear why in a sec.
Okay, so now that we're done with our Haas tangent, we can bring it back.
I can bring it back to sprint.
You know, we're just supporting the American team.
Yeah,
God bless.
that's great. Oh, wow. All right, Jack, here's your fact.
Hit me with it.
So sprint races are like 100 kilometers, which, like, us Americans, you know, we struggle with such things. But then, like, full races are 300, or minimum 305 kilometers.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was that much, so it is like a third. Mm-hmm. But I, like, looked up what the equivalent would be. So it'd be the equivalent of running, like, about 9 miles before you run a marathon.
So 9 out of 26.
Yeah. So, like, the day before you run a marathon, you have to run 9 miles. But think of all that can happen in those 9 miles, you know? Like,
You could pull something.
fatigue. You could accidentally trip over your running partner.
For our listeners, Jack is floored. Her mouth is open. She's trying to compute.
I almost did not finish my half marathon. I can't even
This is
imagine.
coming from a girl who ran a half marathon.
Well, this is why I gave her the fact. I
Plug.
thought she would
Plug.
appreciate it.
You know, and I don't want to brag, but, like, I was doing really well up until the last mile, and then they had a fake finish, which
What?
they had
Yeah.
a fake finish during my half
There was,
marathon.
like, a whole section that had, like, an arch, and it was, like, a blow-up and everything.
That's cruel.
And it wasn't just me. Like, the 2 people that I ran with did the same thing. You see the arches in the distance. You're like, oh, I got to kick it into gear. It's right there. So I'm sprinting past people, giving it, you know, my last effort. You get to the arch. It's not the finish, and then there's a group of people standing there because at the same time they were doing a 10K. So it's like right if you're doing the half marathon, left to finish if you're doing the 10K. And they're like, oh, you're almost there. So close. Just another 0.3 miles. I was about ready to yeet myself into the water because we were next to Lake Michigan where we were finishing. And so, of course, you go under this bridge and then you see the actual finish. Again, same blow-up structure. So it was just a duplicate. I don't know why they did this. Whoever planned this race, plug, the Chai Marathon, no. Just cancel the balloon arch. Every single person did it. And then, so I'm running, and of course there's the crowd at the finish line. And everyone's like, come on, so close, give it everything you got. And I'm sitting there just pissed. I am so angry because I'm like, yeah, I did give it everything I got. At the first finish, that was supposed to be the finish line, and now I just look like a bitch just finishing like bare, like, you know, normal pace.
I
And
have
like,
a great video of Jack finishing this race.
just like no emotion, no sense of joy, nothing. Just
She saw
pissed.
me, gave me a thumbs up, and then just backed down. Her face just dropped and kept going, like, you got it.
Cruel and unusual punishment. I'm floored.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gives me a new perspective on sprint races. But it is fun for the fans, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
I think if the sprint races are for the fans, make it more for the fans. Make it more of a spectacle. Make it spicier. Have it be a standalone event.
Yeah, let me, like, write
Fuck
in
it up,
comments.
reverse grid.
Yeah, we need to write in a comment and submit it.
Dear FIA, dear F1.
we want to see reverse grids. And that's not
Sincerely-
even, like, working in my favor, but, like,
The Grid Gals.
yeah.
This isn't even like really a fun change. I think they should like every single driver should be made to race on the same tires.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Because then it truly is, we're just seeing no strategy, just pure quick race.
Pedal to the metal.
Because pretty much everyone was on softs.
Except for Magnussen, he was on medium, and that's what cost him so many places.
Yeah, because they were thinking that the
Someone
tires...
else was too.
Yeah, there was one other person, maybe two, that were started on mediums. Yeah, because they thought the tires would degrade before the end, so I think that's why they started on mediums, but they just called it wrong. It was like a strategy call.
Yeah.
And I think also that's probably why his comment was so against sprint races, because they probably caught him after he had that performance and made the wrong strategy call. But
Yeah.
that comment got me thinking, and if it is truly for the fans, I think we should take almost all of those strategy calls out of it.
Yeah. The gals have thoughts. We have comments.
We have some
A couple
concerns.
of questions. And absolutely some concerns. So to whom it may concern, call us
Reverse
back. Hit us up on our website, www.com/gridgals.
Well, thanks so much for listening. We love to have you here. Wherever you get your podcasts, please like, subscribe, leave us a comment. For the links to all our socials and more information about the podcast, you can visit us on our website, gridgals.com.
And that's the checkered flag for this week. Thanks for joining us on the grid, and we'll be back at you next week. We're going to watch the Miami GP, so excited for another US-based one. We don't have to get up super early, so we all love that. Come catch us here next week for a recap.